Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
This is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. And with me are our full complement of co-hosts. Mark Fitzgerald, how are you?
Doing great, Paul. How are you? Good morning.
Excellent. Will Moorcroft.
Great to be here. Good morning.
Ramsey, thanks for joining us from Atlanta. Are you ready for Thanksgiving?
Absolutely, and happy to be here today.
All right. Well, good. Hey, listen, we have a terrific guest with us today, Debra Jasper. Just to give you a little context, I met Debra, I think it was maybe 2013 or 14 at a LIMRA conference, way back when people were still trying to figure out, is this social media really going to stay? Who's going to be on social media? Well, fast forward today, I think you were an expert then. I think now you've trained 250,000 people on how to build a better presence on LinkedIn, Facebook. You are a partner with LIMRA. That was actually a LIMRA conference. I know you've been followed in the footsteps of some very illustrious people at LIMRA conferences, including, I think, Colin Powell. Is that right?
Yeah, I always like to say I opened for Colin Powell at a LIMRA conference.
Yeah,
It's always it's my humble brag. It's always fun to say.
Well, it is. And we've had a number of very successful women in this field. We've consciously reached out to just, not only broaden our reach, but support an important demographic, both in our audience, but also an important demographic for our agents to reach and connect with. And Debra, in addition, you were in 2018 named by Ernst & Young as one of the top female entrepreneurs in the country. Is that right?
Yeah, so they do a winning women program where they find female entrepreneurs whose businesses are likely to scale, and then they do a lot of support for them. So it's a terrific program. I was in Monaco last year at their entrepreneurial conference, and I miss those days, I have to say. But yeah, a very cool program.
Yeah, well, why don't you first just bring us up to speed? We have talked to a lot of people who are trying to figure out, or when I say we, not on our show, but like in our business, we've talked to a number of agents who are trying to figure out, how do I go from meeting people in person to suddenly working digitally? So just, how has the landscape changed in the last 9 to 12 months here?
It is funny. Yeah. Isn't it funny? So I feel I feel like I've been evangelizing about the need to do business virtually for the last, decade or so. And I am getting a lot of calls right now saying, you were telling us we had to do this. So now we really have to do this. In fact, I spoke at a LIMRA conference in March before any of this, and I was talking about Zoom at a LIMRA event, and no one knew what I was, no one had really heard of it. And now, of course, everyone is Zooming through their days. And so there are a lot of big changes happening now. But the first is you have to think about your online presence. It's more important than ever. Everyone's looking you up before they decide whether to do a meeting with you. And then second, we have to think a lot about how we're writing these days, because we're all reading our emails from our phones and from, laptops, and people are just not tuning in the way they were. And third, we have to think about how we're presenting on Zoom meetings. So I talk about, you have to make a big impact now on a small screen. And that means you have to design for small screens and design for attention in new ways.
Yeah, well, thanks. So now you were kind enough to offer to share with our viewers, and some of whom will be watching on video, some of whom will watching audio, but share with us your most recent work on how to build a presence on LinkedIn, correct?
Yes. And I thought we'd just do a run through today, a quick run through, but I'm getting a lot of questions from advisors and agents in the field these days around their online presence. So we talk a lot about, how do you stay close to clients in this world of social distance, and how are you doing it? It means you're going to have to think more than ever about how you're connecting with people virtually. So LinkedIn has become a much more important component of how we're doing business day to day. There's other things that everyone's thinking about too, of course, as I mentioned, but today we thought we'd delve in really on what is a powerful online presence And how is it either getting people to get closer to me, or, am I driving business or am I driving it away?
Yeah, I think earn's a very interesting word. I'm sure you're going to get into this. I feel people connecting with me who almost think I owe them
Yes.
a connection.
Right. Right. And I think a big shift for us is we have to earn our audience. We have to earn a phone call. We have to earn a Zoom meeting. And so you don't just get to, there's so much pitchiness going on from people that we don't know. And even people we do know, I'm not running into you or I'm not having lunch with you. And so you have to remind me of why you're bringing value to my life, because I'm busy and I'm only letting people in now that I really care about. So I'd be happy to talk, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Mindset Digital, and all of our focus is on competing in a virtual world. But I thought we should just kick it off today by talking about the challenge. And I think the big challenge is, how are we doing business and creating impact on a small screen in a world where we just can't meet with people in the same way? And that's gonna be here for a while. So much of what we love, our football games. I told you guys I'm in Columbus, Ohio today, and I always have to say go Bucks. But if you think about whether it's football or concerts or all of that, that's just completely changed this year. And we say virtual is the new reality. And and I think even once the vaccine comes and we're all more comfortable meeting with each other again, we're still it's going to be a combination. I mean, we have major insurance clients now that have shut down their offices. I work with a client in Nashville, and they've closed their offices and they're not reopening them. Because I think a lot of people have figured out, hey, we can do business this way.
And Mark, we've gotten that feedback from some agents who never thought they'd be doing business via Zoom. I mean, what do you hear from agents who have made that leap?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. A lot of the agents that were very successful, in the past doing business one-on-one, face-to-face, have incorporated it and have really said they'll never go back to the way they did business in the past. Sure, they'll meet clients face-to-face, but a lot of them are leaning to 50+% of their business going forward to be virtual meetings, because they find it to be more efficient, able to get in front of clients easier, able to have a husband and wife both at the same meeting, where in the past they might not have both physically been able to be there. So there's definitely a lot of advantages that can come out of it.
It's so true. And so many of us, I mean, my advisor, I don't want to get in the car and drive across town and sit down with them if I can just do a quick Zoom call. Why wouldn't I? So I think that's a big shift. We know COVID has had a huge impact, but we just know that we're rethinking all of our events. We're rethinking how we connect, and Zooming through our daily work is just the way we work, and I think is going to be for a long time. So everything advisors and agents do, whether it's their emails and their messaging, their virtual presentations, their online presence, I think we all have to be thinking about how we're designing this for today's virtual audience, and especially our online presence. So I wanted to talk today, we don't have a ton of time, but at least about the one essential for powering up your virtual network. Because in the old days, I gave a lot of keynote talks, music, movement, energy, personal interaction. We love that. Even in one-on-one meetings, you knew if your client was tuning in. And I think the big challenge now, of course, with Zoom meetings, while they can be effective, the cat may be walking across the screen, or your kids are talking to you, or the dogs are barking. And as an advisor, we have to fight for attention. And I think that is a big shift now. Attention is our scarcest resource. We don't have enough of it, and it's everything. And that is a big shift for this virtual world. Whether you're leading a webinar for 100 people or you're just in a one-on-one meeting with a client, it's tougher to get people to stay tuned in. Are you guys finding that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think the challenge is only exacerbated because of the business we're in. Click on, here's a crazy, press conference that somebody had, versus I'd like to learn about the lifetime guaranteed withdrawal benefit that could potentially will help offset some of my care expenses. Okay, which headline do you do? Our business, if we go down the product track, just doesn't lend itself to clickbait that will captivate 99% of the audience.
I love that example. That's a great example.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Deborah, a lot of our disclosure documents and the things that we kind of require from a compliance perspective aren't really designed for this type of sharing. You know, they're small print, they're meaty, voluminous, et cetera. And you know, it's not to say that financial professionals were like line item them when they were meeting face to face, but it does present a challenge. But I do agree with you. It's getting attention and keeping it, because there's so many distractions.
Right. And it's funny because I wrote my PhD, or my PhD is actually in educational policy, but I wrote my dissertation on micro storytelling. And I could do a whole session on that, of course, but advisors today have to think about how they're getting down to what's most essential to share, because they do have less time, less attention, and less space. And I do an entire masterclass on visual micro storytelling, because when you're on Zoom, you're going to have to use narrative to create what's your powerful opening, what's your powerful ending, so that people will stay with you. And do you have some storylines that people can remember? When we work with compliance officials, for example, we say casual does not mean careless. That's an easy line to remember, but it does mean casual and friendlier and all of that. And so I think advisors are going to have to think long and hard about how you're getting people to not only tune in, but then remember what you talked about, because you have less time, less attention, and less space on a small screen. And that does create big challenges. One other thing I would add is people need to understand our clients today are not just distant. They were already distracted, and now they're hyper distracted, and they're also distressed. And I could get into the brain science of this, but the brain science shows that distressed clients, it's harder for us to remember. Well, it's harder for us to listen, it's harder to learn, and it's harder to remember. And so that's going to make it even more critical that we're staying connected with them in a lot of different ways, or we're never going to tune in to you or your messaging. So if you're thinking about LinkedIn, for example, you've got to think about how do you get more visibility today when you can't meet with clients, more credibility, more referrals, and more business. And it never mattered more to stay connected online. So typically I talk about 3 key steps when I do a webinar. Today, I'm just going to lean in on one essential for doing business in this world of social distance, because I do think people are not spending enough time thinking about their profile. And again, I may look you up and say, you're not worth tuning into. So I would encourage anyone listening to the podcast to just Google themselves. And the first thing that will likely come up is LinkedIn. A lot of our clients got on it a long time ago and never went back, so they haven't looked lately. And ask yourself, would I do business with me if I read my online profile?
Yeah, I think when I think of LinkedIn, I'd say few advisors probably that we work with today would tell you LinkedIn is where they're finding leads. But Debra, I don't know if you have stats on like how many clients will look at a LinkedIn profile before they actually meet in person with the agent.
And here's there's a lot of stats about, of course, clients using social just drive more business. It's hard to say you looked at my profile and you didn't take the meeting with me. So how am I ever going to know that? But I will tell you, I'm hearing a lot of stories, especially anecdotal stories, because sometimes I talk about this and advisors, of course, say, LinkedIn, my clients are older. They're not on LinkedIn. And I'm like, yeah, well, your clients are on Google and they're going to Google you. And this is what's going to come up. And more important, and advisors know this, especially with their older clients, when the man dies, advisors are very likely to lose that business from the wife. And part of that is the kids then look you up on LinkedIn and say, Mom, why don't you just come with my advisor? Because maybe you haven't built that same relationship that you have with the husband, with the wife. And so you have to also understand that the kids are definitely looking you up and advising mom and dad on whether they should stay with you. So clients are definitely finding that for sure.
It's an interesting principle, because one of the things that certainly I've seen as I sort of have navigated LinkedIn is that, there's a lot more obvious engagement day to day from people that may be in your network who actually may more often be peers than potential clients.
Sure.
So trying to get some insight into where you really want to get to, which is leads, is an interesting challenge.
And I want to talk about that because, listen, I tell my clients all the time. I was giving a keynote at a big insurance conference in Mexico a couple of years ago, and I was telling these guys, posting is not prospecting. And it was clear to me that people had sort of been sold a bill of goods, like get on LinkedIn and leads are going to magically appear. No, LinkedIn is just a great database on steroids, but you have to work it like you work any other client list. And I want to talk about what that means, but it's important for people to think that posting alone is not prospecting. No one ever said, hey, Paul, I love your post. Can I do business with you? It just doesn't work that way. So I want to start with, this is just, I was working the other day. You guys may know Norm Trainer over at Covenant Group, and we did his LinkedIn makeover. And he said his aha is too often people do LinkedIn, and I'll show it in a moment, but where they do their profile to make themselves look great. When I go to your profile, I don't want to know that you think you're great. I want to know how you're going to make me great.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like in any sales call. You never start by saying, did I tell you about my car? And let me tell you about my great house. I mean, you have to start out by what's in it for the client. Your online presence has to start that way too. And then we'll talk about how you turn that into prospecting. But the most common activity on LinkedIn is visiting your profile. This should be the microsite of you. And I'll tell you, here's the number one mistake I see with profiles. People think it's a resume. So they're going to tell you, Paul has been in business for 25 years. I'm already tuning you out, right? The moment you start talking about your history or how much you've accomplished, I'm moving on. Instead, what clients want to know is, do I like you? What are you going to do for me? Can I relate to you? So that's a big shift in how you want to think about your profile and whether people give you the thumbs up. So if you're sitting there today thinking about your online presence, go to your profile and say, don't tell me what you do. Tell me what you love about what you do. For me, that is a big shift. So the two questions that I advise people they need to be answering is, how do you help people like me, and why should I work with you? And I feel like we kind of know this. We've all been through that sales training. We've heard this, but we haven't translated that to what we're doing online and what we're doing virtually. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's also a cultural shift, right? Because if I'd set this office up like an agent would 10 years ago, and both Mark and I've worked at companies where every time you went to a conference you got a gold plate. I would have fill this with gold plates
exactly
to impress you how good I was. Now I guess when it's about them, how do I subtly though establish the fact that I am an expert?
I love that. Yeah, exactly. And you need to do that, but you want to do that in a much different way. And you're right. So in my background, I don't have my PhD plaques hanging or whatever, right? Because it just doesn't make me feel. People sometimes say, should I have a fake background with my logo? And I said, only if you want to remind me that you're pitching to me the entire 30 minutes I'm on the call with you. Sure, do that. But I think we're looking for more authentic relationships. So if you look at Norm's profile, which I'm showing here, but those of you who can't see it, he started his profile in the old days by saying, I started Covenant Group in 1995, and here's my books and that kind of thing. Here's his after, and his after is much more visual. So you want to have that branded background. You want your photo to be personable and a little more casual today, because we're in a more casual world. I was on a Zoom call the other day with a woman who had on really chunky jewelry and a suit jacket, and it felt incongruous. Like none of us are dressing like that right now. And so you want your image to be, again, professional and casual. And you want to showcase your thought leadership, but you want to start with how you're helping your clients achieve growth or what you're doing for your clients. So
let me just poke a little bit about that, because we had a really great wholesaler, tremendous energy on, big believer in, now he is meeting with advisors to represent a carrier, of showing up in a suit and tie like they were used to in a real environment. Is the cat, now again, his audience would be agents, who's Norm trying to connect with?
He coaches advisors, right? Every day. So in practice management. So most of his clients are agents and advisors, just like mine. But here's the thing. I swear I've been meaning to write a blog post about this even before COVID, called Why Your Business Suit Can Be Costing You Business. Because if the client isn't on in a suit and tie, then I argue mirror the client. I think about that too when you're thinking about how you write to your client as well. But you want to mirror the client in tone and just mirror the client overall. Again, I'm not saying that you want to have on a sweatshirt or a t-shirt, but you can look professional and not so formal. We're just not doing business formally right now. And I think that's a big shift that's not going to go back either. That's why I think you've got to think more relationship, less resume. And that's
Right.
true just how you show up visually and how you show up online.
Well, this is honestly one I've struggled with, is how do I show up for certain meetings dressed where it feels, if I were sitting here in a suit and tie with this, I'd be like,
yeah,
what? Mark,
well, you know what though,
you
a great
played with
example,
this a lot.
The other day I got on a Zoom meeting, and I had a tie on. I looked around, I was the only one with a tie on. And it was kind of, I put it on because I thought it was the right audience for that, but no one had a tie on. But to your point, Deborah, this is actually really interesting to me because, you know, I'm guilty. I look at my LinkedIn profile was done years ago. It's a resume. And it was designed when I got on LinkedIn to be kind of like networking with other peers. It wasn't designed to be really engaging. It was like the basic facts about me and what I've done in my career. I do like what you're showing online now, which is like a featured thing, or featured aspect where Norm's got, you know, there's videos and other things that you really can get to know him through instead of just, you know, the years of experience he has.
Exactly. Because I don't start out, if I was meeting you, people have to think about this. If I was meeting you here's what I always say, and, you know, at a social networking event, just at a networking event, at a LIMRA conference, I wouldn't walk up, right, and say, hi, I'm Debra. Debra is a dynamic leader, you know, and it seems so ridiculous that we're going to do that online. And when we do, it just turns people off. So if you look him up, you'll see it's now that summary section in your profile is your most valuable real estate. Every agent and advisor in the country should have that filled out in a personable, telling the story of me kind of way. So Norm's now leading with, it's the right time to have the grit and drive of an entrepreneur. That's more engaging. I used to be a journalist in another life, and I used to cover presidential campaigns. I'm glad I don't do that now. But I can tell you that when I was on the road, you know, I covered a lot of gubernatorial races. So I was writing mini magazine bios of the president and of gubernatorial candidates. And I thought, oh, this is what this is. This should be a mini magazine bio. So it should be first person, skimmable, smart thought leadership, the right keywords, and personable. And you're seeing people do this throughout. So you guys probably know Jim Curley at LIMRA.
Very well.
So Jim, when I met him, here's his before. And for those of you who can't see this, it's a lot of text and not a great photo.
Super text heavy. You know,
right.
Lots of paragraph would be,
right.
You know, it's got to be like 300 words long.
No one's going to read it.
No one's going to read it. Here's his after. Great photo, no tie, sports jacket, looks a lot friendlier, nice branded background. Who would you do business with? It's just that simple. And this is and frankly, I'm much more likely to read this than I am your bio on your website. Although, can I add, for the agents and advisors at home, whatever you're doing in your summary section, your bio too should be the mini magazine bio of you. It should be friendlier and more engaging. And you're just seeing people do this across. This is John at AIG. We've worked closely with him. Look at his before and after photo. And again, for those of you who can't see this, the number of unfriendly looking advisors and agents out there is a little surprise to me. So try to smile and make that photo look great.
I know John Stout too. You've done wonders for this guy.
Are you suggesting that people get, you know, professional photographers, or what's your take on that?
No, I actually think you can have the image on my LinkedIn profile. If people want to go look at Debra Jasper on LinkedIn, my husband took that photo when I was in Monaco last year. So our phones take great pictures. But, and you can look at Doyle Williams, and he's standing up. Now he has on a tie, but he doesn't have on a sport coat. And it's just, again, more friendly. So you're just seeing people do this overall. Your profile should make you look like an influencer. I was working with Weicho at Mass Mutual, and he said, hey, he realized that when he got a fully optimized profile, it made him feel like he had on, his best outfit and just, the nicest suit, that sort of things. Now we did this profile before COVID, so he is in a suit and tie. I might argue today that we'd want to even encourage him to look even more casual, but I think we do have to lead from the front.
Sorry, just to go down there, Mark. Okay, I've seen you experiment. I've experimented a lot. What's your take? Tie, suit, jacket. What rules do you think are emerging here?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's actually a very interesting and timely piece of feedback. if you think back prior to the Zoom meetings that we're having, I honestly never would have thought of going into, an advisor meeting or one of our distribution office meetings without a suit and tie on. And my first normal feeling of comfort on videos was to wear a jacket and tie. And yesterday, I actually recorded a message that we're going to distribute out around the holiday season, and I had a shirt and tie on, and I showed it to some friends. And the first person I showed it to, she actually chuckled, and she said, "You know what? Lose the shirt and tie. You're too formal. You're just too serious for a holiday message."
Yes.
And so to your point, in terms of having that more casual, approachable look,
it feels out of touch. That is not the life we're living right now. And we look silly. Everybody knows we're sitting at home, So it just looks silly. I think it's out of touch. I do think that we're not responding to that. In fact, there's a woman whose profile went viral last month when she said, "I feel like my profile photo is so polished. It's not how I'm living my life." And she switched to a new photo, and she ended up being invited on Good Morning to talk about this. So I do think again, I want to go back to casual does not mean careless. We have to get that out of our heads and understand that we can be friendly and professional. And I think the tie manufacturers are in trouble. You can quote me on that, because I just don't know that we're going to put those back on either, even when we're back out. But at the very least, you want to think about a friendly professional image. You want to think about a branded background, because don't use your default background. Why wouldn't you brand that, or at the very least make it more visually engaging? If you look, of course, I'm looking you up and making a snap decision about your credibility and relatability, and you want to look visually, you want to look right. And I think these images I'm showing folks here that look very formal with that professional background are kind of out of touch. And you are seeing people just look more like this, which what I'm showing now is just people look friendlier, they're smiling, and they're more casual. And again, I think the guy in the suit and tie, I think that's going to change. I think we're going to see a lot less of that. One important point for everyone, though, is you're 14 times more likely to be found if you just have a photo. So at the very least, put your photo up and look good at a glance, because you want a 5-star profile to get people to tune in. I'll make one other quick point, and that is skip the blah, blah, blah. So this is, again, as I mentioned, not your resume. So if you're reading dynamic integrated financial advisor with 25 plus years of experience, I've already tuned you out. So those first 6 words matter a lot. So think about that. What's missing is when you say Mike Jones provides comprehensive financial strategies, it's the blah, blah, blah. That's what I call it. So I say skip the blah, blah, blah. I was coaching a guy the other day who wanted to say he wanted to lead with, "My team thinks I'm amazing." I'm like, no, they probably don't. But even if they do,
oh, mine does though.
We're not going to start with that.
Mine does.
So instead, you want to say, every day I'm focused on what? Helping entrepreneurs make smarter financial decisions. I spend my days listening to my clients, working together to develop a financial strategy. It just has to be more about your client and more about how you use your skills to help your client, and less about you.
Okay, so I've got one. Well, sorry, you. I don't want to. You probably you've already thought this through far ahead. So we see one description for Mr. Miller here. Oh. So let's use Mark as an example. Mark Fitzgerald. Should it be head of annuity sales for NASA, or should it be what are the pros and cons of retirement income wizard?
No retirement income wizard. No, I'm fine with good, your title. I want you to have credibility. No cutesy stuff, right? But you can be relatable. So instead, if I were interviewing you, I would say, what are the favorite things that you do for your clients every day? So you just want to be more client focused. In that profile, I might also say, how are you spending your time? And then you may get one friendly away from work line. So you just want to think about this as more likability and relatability, because resume-like summaries are just harder to read, and we're trying to build a sense of connection with people. Okay. I like Joseph's here because he leads with what drives me, knowing that people will enjoy a better retirement because they are prepared. Now, he eventually will get into my years of experience working with advisors in the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. Now, he's talking about him, but he didn't lead with that.
Again, I
So,
have to ask you, thumbs up or thumbs down for emojis in my descriptions?
yeah, thumbs down. No
Okay,
emojis.
just
I
to
do
make that
give
clear.
people one away from work line. I was working with a C-suite executive at Nationwide, actually, and he, of course, said his away from work is I like to play golf, and I'm like, no, it's just boring. Who does? A lot of people do. So he came back and said, what if I said away from work, I'm an infrequent and frighteningly bad golfer. I loved it, and he's texted me since then and said, Debra, I have gotten more comments on this because now you just seem more relatable. It's just one line. And I can tell you, I got business the other day on my LinkedIn profile. It says away from work, you'll find me on the water, either skiing or boating on Lake Erie. And that is my boat. And I got a note from a guy saying, I love boating and, and we're working together now and he's a great client, but we ended up having a great conversation because he has a boat too. And so you just a little bit of personality goes a long way, as we all know.
Hey, Deborah, what's the goal here? Is it to get them to connect? Is it to get them to relate to you? I mean, what are you really trying to achieve with your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, it's C, all of the above. So I want you to look me up and I want you to say, yes, I'd like to do business with this person. I think she's likable. I think she's relatable. And then I want them to connect with me and be a part of my database. And then I want to start connecting with them and build relationships with them. And of course, eventually I'd like to do business with them. So your goal is you're establishing your likability and relatability. You know that there are three basically people choose to do business with us based on, did someone refer us? Did they look us up and decide that they like what they see? And do they have a good encounter with us? Those are the magic three. These days, the big part of that is they're looking us up before they have that encounter with us. And that encounter may be virtual. And there's a lot of studies now too about when you have that virtual meeting, it's harder to read body language. You have to do big things for people to see your hands, all of that. And so we're just looking for trust signals in new ways now.
So
We're not having lunch.
One other thing on that, if I'm an advisor and I've got a great LinkedIn profile and I'm trying to network, I mean, should I be going out and trying to connect with lots of people because, proactively that I may know or know through a connection? I mean, it seems to me that I get a lot of requests to connect with people that I have no idea who they are. And if I accept the request, then the next thing, the immediate follow-up I get is, thanks for connecting. Here's what I can do for you.
Exactly. The pitch. So I love that question. And look, I didn't even set you up for this, but typically when I do in-depth coaching on this. We have a 5-week in-depth coaching program because it takes, if you want people to connect with you in a virtual world, it isn't just what you're saying. Hey, let's link in. Hey, I want to sell you something. Pitching doesn't work. It never did. And now it really doesn't work. So we actually have to be a lot more mindful, in part because there's so much coming at our clients. Breaking news, Zoom meetings, the competition is fierce. So we have to think about how we're leveraging our connections to get to know the people we most want to know. So first of all, here's how I decide whether to take an invite, whether to accept an invite. Do I know you or do I know I want to know you? Otherwise, I ignore it. And here's why. If Paul connected with me, but it turns out he's spamming me, but I linked in and then he links into you, you may say, oh, he's linked into Debra, so he must be okay. So I'm loaning him some of my credibility. So do not link into spammers. And if you have, go disconnect from them, unfollow them or disconnect, because you're loaning them credibility. But, back to when I said posting is not prospecting, what people need to be doing is looking up their first degree connections and figuring out who they know that you want to know. And then you're not asking for that generic introduction. You're not saying, hey, can you introduce me to someone who might use my services? Instead, you're saying, hey, I see you know Bob, and I really think I'm doing a lot of work in the construction industry. If you could introduce me to Bob, that would be terrific. It's a lot easier for me to introduce you to specific people and to kind of brainstorm who might be interested in you.
So I've got a quick question. There's been a lot of talk in the last year or so about a LinkedIn tool called Sales Navigator. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on it because everything I've seen about it, it seems to operate in precisely the ways that you're saying you shouldn't operate on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, I have Sales Navigator. I tend to think that that is for, you'd have to be a super LinkedIn user to need to get to that level and really operating at a very high level. So many people are not even using the LinkedIn database they have before they start trying to use the, the sort of sales navigator level. I mean, I can just use LinkedIn and figure out who I know that have connections that I want to know. And that's what I should be doing. So for example, if you're thinking, how do I connect with that CEO? Most of us are not even using advanced search that's available to us before we get there. So I can do an advanced search and figure out every CEO in my town who went to the same college as me, or everyone who graduated and owns restaurants, from my school and owns restaurants. I can find all the C-suite executives that are connected to you. So that's how, when I talk about tapping into the power, people should be first tapping into the power of advanced search.
They definitely, Deborah, they definitely do. I got one the other day. Someone looked at my profile and saw that I went to a certain university, and they said if I had lunch with them, they'd give me a sweatshirt from that university. So I thought it was.
That still feels pitchy to me, though.
It was a little, but I you know what? It was a virtual lunch too.
Yeah, well, that's better, right? But another way to do it, though, a more compelling way to do it is say, hey, hey, Tom, I see that you graduated from Ohio State the same year I did, and we both know Bill. And Bill tells me that you're doing great work. So I need to call Bill and say, hey, tell me about Tom. I'm much more likely. I got a note the other day from someone saying, hey, a guy that I know was telling me that you're doing great work and thought we should connect. Of course, I'm going to connect if it's people that I know.
It is a fascinating dynamic environment right now because all the kind of ways that people reach out and try to connect, you're right. They're just, some of them seem genuine and others seem like not so genuine.
Yeah, and the not genuine ones just don't work.
Right.
So you've got to work your network.
Yeah, my favorite one is the request, hi, LinkedIn suggested that we connect with each other.
Yeah. No, they didn't. So I say LinkedIn only works when you work LinkedIn, but you should be working LinkedIn the same way you'd work any database. That's what people fail to understand. So let's say that I don't know anyone who knows you, but I want to get to know you. I should link in, or at the very least start following your posts. And then I can say, Deborah, I just read the article that you wrote about the impact of the COVID crisis. I found it really insightful and I'd like to link into you. And then do not pitch me after you do. Then just start reading what I'm posting and comment on it for a while. Then you can start to find ways that we could, do business together. It just, if it's not realistic or authentic, you're kind of throwing a lot at the wall and not much is going to stick.
I think it's important also going back to, even Paul's comment early on in the discussion about how a lot of agents might not be using LinkedIn actively as a prospecting source. But looking at it from the other perspective, if clients are going on doing searches or prospects are going on doing searches, it's obviously very important to have a good landing page on LinkedIn to really kind of convey, who you are.
That's
Especially
right.
the comment you made, Deborah, about the fact of, when your client might pass away, and the spouse or the children are doing a search, somebody who doesn't know you already. That's a very powerful, message to communicate out there as to why it's so important to have that landing page, state the right message.
It really is. And I'll tell you, I'm much more likely to look you up on LinkedIn than to go kind of navigate your website and try to find your bio. And here's the other important thing. You don't have to be connected. You should at least have 500 connections, but you don't have to be connected to 10,000 people. Connect to 1,000 influencers. And then when you write a blog post, it reminds people, oh yeah, you're staying top of mind. I want my advisor, I want to see him in my network every now and then saying smart stuff. And at the very least, I should be getting a happy work anniversary, Deborah, note from him. So I know he's thinking of me, or a happy birthday note, because, that stuff can pop up. And it's a lot easier, especially happy work anniversary, and make it a real note, not the default. But just small, we say every touch point matters. And in a pandemic, small touch points online can be meaningful to your client. So it isn't just about new business. How are you using this to stay connected to the business that you have in authentic, meaningful ways? So I think that's important as well. We used to say always be closing. You guys remember this movie, but I think it's now always be connecting. And that is a big difference. So when we advise clients, we do a lot of coaching in this. We have something called a Power Network Habit program. You need to get to a 5-star profile you need to get to a 50 plus social selling index score, and you need to have at least 500 connections. And I want to ask you now, and I didn't ask you guys this before, but do any of you know what your SSI score is?
No.
I don't know how to get a
Yes.
5-star profile. I don't know what the SSI score is.
Yay. So for the people who are listening, I'm going to tell them how to get it. So if they do nothing else from this podcast, they should do this. And you guys can all do this as well. So before we wrap up, I'll make sure to tell people how to get their SSI score. I will say, a short webinar does not a new habit make. So we talked today about an online presence. I didn't really get to lean in on what's a robust strategic network, or how do you create smart thought leadership, or what's your action plan for posting during the day. We didn't get to talk about what LinkedIn groups you should be using, or your blogging strategy, or how you leverage recommendations. But I think that those things are all critical, how you're using advanced search, doubling your client touch points. We have found, because we've done a tremendous amount of research on this. Frankly, guys, our firm took in private equity to invest in figuring out how to get to measurable results on this. And on average, when you do these things, our advisors are getting 7 times more appointments. So it does through LinkedIn. So it does matter.
So takeaway would be,
but you've got to do it smartly.
Yeah. All this great stuff, but there's a lot more. And if you invest the time, the payoff could be tremendous for your business
right.
in the future.
So I think if your profile is step 1, then you have to have a strategy for raising your visibility, expanding your network, investing in the right relationships. And that's how you're going to get to the measurable results, to really drive action. But that's the methodology for it, for sure. There is a methodology that makes a big impact. So, and if people want to go to powernetworkhabit.com, we do have a LinkedIn checklist to just kind of say, here's, how you do this.
Okay. I want to know all your scores.
So, okay, let me tell you how to get your scores. All you have to do to figure out how influential you are is you search the social selling index online. It'll come up, you'll see LinkedIn, and it says get your score free. Put your name in, and you will get a LinkedIn score. And LinkedIn has an algorithm, and they're basically assessing you in 4 categories. Have you established your professional brand? Are you connected to the right people? Are you engaging with insights? And are you successfully building relationships? You get a score from 0 to 100. You can see Mike, who works with us, has an 84. That's a very high score. I will say Norm, he didn't have a high score, and he went through the program, and his score is like in his 70s now, which is higher than mine. So he's doing a really good job. On average, you want your score to be between 60 and 70. But I'm going to ask you guys to guess, drum roll, any guesses what the average score is in financial?
30.
Well, I'm going to cheat. I think LinkedIn tells me it's like 51 in my network.
No, the average score is 14 in the industry.
Wow.
So the average score for your network may be in the 50s, which means you have a pretty engaged network. But at least check your score. The good news is the bar is low, so you can get further ahead. But I would shoot for a score of 60. And if you're managing a team of advisors, you should all know what your SSI score is, and you should report out on that, fairly regularly.
Mine says 72. Can you help me get it higher?
That's a really high score. Yeah, that's really good.
You beat me, Paul. You beat me. I'm 55. I just checked it.
See, I knew you guys would do that. Yeah. It's fun to do, because once you tell people about this, you'll get obsessed a little bit.
Yeah, Ramsey, I want to know yours.
I haven't gotten there yet, but
it takes 5 seconds.
I'm going there now.
I couldn't wait, Debra, till we were over, just because you piqued my curiosity. So
I know, right? Oh, believe me, I've done this talk, it's really funny. I did it. Who was I working with? I'm trying to think. It was like 3,000 advisors. And at dinner that night, people were coming up with their phones and saying, here's my score. I get that a lot. So
what does it really mean? I know we're coming up on time, but what does a 55 for me versus a 70 for Ramsey really mean?
So they're assessing you basically what's the size of your network, how often are you engaging with your network, how good is your profile. Now, when they talk about your profile, they're just looking at, do you have sections filled out? They are not judging you on, are they filled out well? But, keep that in mind.
Now,
But if you're interested in this kind of stuff and people want more coaching, we have a 5-week coaching program, or we'll do a LinkedIn makeover for you, where, because sometimes people are like, our team spends 30 hours per makeover, because we interview you, we write it, we we add your SEO keywords, we fill out your experience sections, we find those videos for your visual gallery, we design your background. I mean, it's kind of like doing a mini website. But I think it's worth it, because again, people are judging us these days online, because we're not running into each other in the same way. So there you go.
There's a great episode on Black Mirror, which actually was interesting, because then about 3 months later, China rolls out the program where, if you don't have a certain score, you can't go on vacation, get on planes.
Really? Oh, great. Now you're scaring me.
Yeah.
Hey, Deborah, what else besides LinkedIn for social media are you seeing or advising people on?
Yeah, for me right now, LinkedIn is where we're spending all of our time. Of course, I have thousands of followers on Twitter, and I've been teaching Twitter since 2008. But in terms of trying to grow business, LinkedIn is the place to be. Twitter's good. I have a Hootsuite account where I can navigate what my peers are tweeting, and what digital agencies I'm interested in are tweeting, and what influencers I know are tweeting. And so I like following that, because if I have some high level influencers, I'm doing work with a lot of C-suite executives and I want to know what they're doing, I follow that. But that's, to me, more of an informative channel. Where I'm growing a lot of business is mostly on LinkedIn. For an example, and I love this example, but I wanted to be a keynote speaker a few years ago at PubCon. It's 3,000 digital executives, and there's only 6 main stage speakers, and there's 400 breakout speakers. And a guy from Australia, where I'd spoken at a Retail Global conference, recommended me. But before the organizer hired me, he looked me up on LinkedIn, and I have a video there of highlights of my keynotes. And he said, "Deborah, I watched your video on LinkedIn, love it, come and be a main stage speaker." I gave 3 main stage talks in Vegas. It drove a ton of business. If I had not had a fully optimized LinkedIn profile, I think I would have been maybe a breakout speaker. So that's the kind of opportunity, I think, that if we're not tuning in, we're going to be missing out on. And would I have known I missed that opportunity? No. How would I know? He just looked me up and say, "No, let me find another speaker." So the short answer is LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Is the place that we're spending our time. We do digital transformation sometimes for C-suite executives, and we'll go ahead and give them a Twitter profile and write some of their early tweets to sort of help them onboard. But that's not, if I have a limited amount of time as an advisor, I think you're much smarter to spend it on LinkedIn.
Hey, well, this is great. We are right up at the end of the time here, Deborah. Thanks so much for your time here.
Sure.
So I think a question for you. So you offer a lot to a lot of different people. If I'm an agent listening to this, I presume I could hire your company, right, to help me do my profile. Is that right?
Yes.
You've got coaching programs, so you could actually teach me how to use this. If I'm in the, I saw some of the profiles of some of the people who are running distribution channels. I'm presuming you work with companies and deliver this type of material at sales events, correct?
Right, we do. And we have thousands of people going through these programs. I mean, at one big insurance firm, we rolled out 24,000 seats of social media training. So we can scale it. And in smaller companies, we do LinkedIn makeovers just as a one-off for agents. So you have options. If you just want a LinkedIn makeover, we'll do that. If you want an audit, we'll do that. But whether you work with our firm or a different firm, I hope the takeaway today is virtual is the new reality. Our audience has changed, their expectations have changed, and there is no going back. We can't stand still. So we can't afford not to look good online, and we can't afford not to be communicating much more effectively, really with a big impact on a small screen. Because again, as you guys said, this is just going to be an important part of how we do business moving forward, whatever happens. So with us or with someone else, I think it's important to get the training that you need to use this effectively, because these are sophisticated platforms and I'm not technical. So in some ways I got into this because here's how I look at it. I look at our program as you get on LinkedIn and I think of it as a gym membership. You have good intentions, but then you never go back. And I think of us as the personal trainer who's making sure you show up and giving you, the goals. We want your SSI score to be 60 by the time you end this program. it's just like having any kind of personal trainer or coach. You're more likely to get there if you have smart people who are holding you accountable. So find someone to hold you accountable, whether it's us or someone else, and lean in on this, because again, how do we stay close to clients in this world of social distance? We're going to have to do it online. So I hope that's helpful. I hope people will link in at Debra Jasper. And if you have questions, they can ask me there. And I really enjoyed spending time with you guys today.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been great.
Hey, Debra, thanks so much. This was just a wealth of information. Any final thoughts or questions, gentlemen?
Just a pretty good to-do list. So thank
Yeah,
you.
lots to think about, and lots of opportunity, right? I think a lot right before our very eyes for a lot of folks.
Oh yeah. If you're not using LinkedIn to drive business, I think you are missing tremendous opportunities, or even to stay close to the clients that you already have in a virtual world right now. It should be a key component of your daily strategy.
All right. Well, listen, hey, thanks so much again. And for our listeners, audio listeners, be sure to go to thatannuityshow.com to actually watch the video if you're only listening to audio, because I think these slides, Debra, thanks for sharing them, I think really brought your story to life. And there's nothing like seeing the picture of what a profile looks like before and after. So thanks for your time. And everybody, thanks so much for joining us, and look forward to another episode next week of That Annuity Show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.